Hello everyone, this is Karina with JCAL Digital, and today we're going to be talking about music from the Middle East. For today's purpose, the Middle East includes music from Arabic and non-Arabic speaking countries. These musical traditions come from the Arabic, Persian, and Turkish ancient musical traditions. Instead of looking at genres and styles from specific countries of the Middle East, today we're going to start by taking a look at the melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic aspects of this music. While we learn about these musical elements, we'll be learning about music that has influenced so many regions around the world, including Asia, Europe, and even Africa. You'll also hear music and see instruments that look very similar to those of past videos because of its wide influence. After we take a look at the common musical elements of this music, we will look at different genres of music from around the Middle East and see those musical elements in different ways. Let's get started. The musical scales of Middle Eastern music are called makomet, meaning places. There are many different families of those scales which are combined together based on their shared fixed place or their root. Some of these families are Ajam, Bayati, Hijaz, and Kurd. Let's learn how some of these makomet sound like, and even practice singing a few on our own.
Let's get started with our next activity. We're actually going to learn a few of the makomet scales. We're going to learn them electronically through a fun piano that I found, and we're also going to try and sing them. Now, before we jump in, we should talk about the differences between, the main difference between the scales in Western music and the scales in other parts of the world, which include Middle Eastern music. All right. Now, in Western music, we have scales made of 7 notes in the repeating octave, which are a combination of whole and half steps. Now, when we look at our scale, for instance, C major, we have a whole step, another whole step, a half step, a whole step, whole step, whole step, and a half step. In C major, you can clearly see the difference between whole and half steps, as the half steps are represented by a black key being in the middle. Let's look at it one more time. Starting on C, up a whole step to D, whole step to E, all white keys so far, nothing in between, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, nothing in between, and we end with our half step to get to our 8th note. Besides these 2 notes, which is our half step with nothing in between, and these 2 notes with nothing in between, those are our 2 half steps, the rest of them all have a half step in between. Yeah? When we do all the half steps, we have a chromatic scale that sounds like this. Now, half steps are these steps that do not have any notes in between them. They sound like this. Whereas a whole step sounds like this. Practice that singing with me. All right, we're going to start with the whole step. We're going to sing la la. Sing that with me. La la. One more time. La la. Great. Now let's practice singing a half step. Same starting note, but we go slightly lower. La la. La la. La la. Good. Let's start with a whole step. La la. And a half step. La la. All right, so that's how we build our scales in Western music. Now, those are called semitones, okay, those half steps. Middle Eastern scales are based on quarter tones, which means that they're even closer together than our half steps.
This keyboard here shows the Western keyboard at the top, and in the middle, in the gray and dark gray, are our quarter tones. They are layered somewhere between our white keys and our black keys to show that they are halfway in between those half steps. In just a second, we're going to take a look at practicing singing these quarter tones. To most people with a background in Western music, these quarter tones seem slightly sharp or slightly flat, meaning slightly out of tune with where we need to go. Try and recenter your brain and realize that we are learning something that is completely new to most of us. Alrighty, let's take a listen to what these quarter tones sound like. Practice singing along. Listen to our first scale, or makom, called the Bayati makom. Then practice singing along. Try singing along and practicing those small quarter tones. Watch the keys as I press them to help remind you when we are going to a quarter tone. Our next scale is the makomet rast. Now it's your turn to practice singing along. The last scale that we're going to practice today is the makom huzam. Here's your turn to try singing it. The melody is special in all music. After all, it's the part of music that gets stuck in our heads when we're thinking of a song. But Middle Eastern music uses melody in a way that's different than most Western classical and folk music traditions. Most traditional Middle Eastern music uses a harmonic concept called heterophony, which is a fancy word to describe many instruments playing the melody at the same time. What makes heterophony different from monophony, which is one melody being played by one or more instruments together, is that in heterophony, each musical line has a variation or ornamentation in the melody that they play. These variations are different for each instrument, and the musicians take turns changing it up. Let's look at an example of these musical textures from one of my favorite Disney movies, Tarzan. In this excerpt, all of the animals are using everyday objects to create musical instruments. Each musical instrument begins playing the melody that is being sung. Eventually, each instrument comes up with its own variation on that melody and is given almost a solo part in order to give that instrument a spotlight.
I feel something happening here.
Now, let's look at some of the most popular rhythms used in Middle Eastern music and learn them. Each rhythm uses a combination of open and closed sounds. Open sounds, doom, will have more of a ring, while the closed sounds, tak, will be a shorter, more staccato sound. We will use doom for the open sounds and tak for the closed sounds as we learn these rhythms together. Let's dive in. Now, this first rhythm that we're going to learn is called the Baladi rhythm. Okay, it's in 4/4, which means 4 beats per measure. The quarter note gets the beat. Okay, so the structure of this rhythm, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, they're going to be phrases of those 4. Now, I'm going to get my metronome set up here. Okay, there are plenty of free metronome apps. I use this one on my phone. And you can download them and practice anytime you want. Okay, so we set it to 4/4, 4 beats per measure. The quarter note gets the beat, and let's start pretty slow to just to get us started. Okay, I'm going to start at 60 beats per measure. Okay, make sure we're on that quarter note. All right, so here's our 4 beats. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, as we hear those 4 beats, those are the context of our rhythms, right? The Baladi rhythm uses a combination of short and long notes, some that are open and some that are closed, okay? So we have, let's just take a listen to me performing the rhythms, and then you can join me. 1, 2, here we go. Doom, doom, tuck, 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 doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, doom, tuck, 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 doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. You can clap it. Doom, doom, tuck, 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 doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, doom, tuck, 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 doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. All right, so we have 2 open sounds, doom, doom, followed by 3 tucks. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Practice that with me. Here we go. Ready? Here we go. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. 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 That's it. Good. Then we add the second part of our rhythm, which is 1 doom followed by 3 tucks. The last one is a lot longer though. It sounds like this. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. So all together, that sounds like this. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Very nice. Now, I like to start by singing them. I'm a singer, so that really, really helps me. Now that we know them, we can create these rhythms with anything. We can create them with a tabletop. We can create them on our lap. Okay? So for the sake of this exercise, since we're working with closed and short sounds, let's do a combination of clapping on our laps and clapping our hands. So for our open dooms, we're going to clap on our laps, and the tucks are going to be up in our hands. So it sounds like this. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Join me when you're ready. Ready? We're going to go with the metronome so we always have our context. Here we go. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Doom, tuck, tuck, tuck. Good job. Now I'm going to use the table for my dooms. Nice job. Now this next rhythm that we're going to learn is called the Ayoub rhythm. Okay, it's really popular in a lot of Middle Eastern music, as well as music from around the world. Okay, these rhythms are not only heard in Middle Eastern music, but just really common, popular ones that we hear. Okay, now the Ayoub rhythm is different from the Baladi rhythm that we just learned because it doesn't have 4 beats per measure, it has 2 beats per measure. Okay, its time signature is 2/4, which means 2 beats per measure, but the quarter note still gets the beat. Okay, so while before we had 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm now going to change our time signature from 4/4 to 2/4. Okay, Again, 2 beats per measure, the quarter note gets the beat. So now we have phrases of 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's our new context, okay? Now the Ayub rhythm is, as all rhythms are, a combination of long and shorts, and we have also our dooms and our tucks, our open and our closed sounds, okay? I'm going to start with teaching you the difference between our long and our short sounds here, okay? There's only 2 types of note lengths. Long, short, short, long, 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 okay? See if you can say that with me. Long, short, short, long, 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 short, short, long, 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 short, short, long, 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 okay? This rhythm only uses 8th and 16th notes. 1/8, 2/16, and an 1/8 and an 1/8. Long, short, short, long, 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 short, short, long, long, okay? Now, we have to add our open and our closed sounds. So for this rhythm, we have doom, tuck, tuck, doom, tuck, doom, tuck, tuck, doom, tuck, doom, tuck, tuck, doom, tuck, doom, tuck, tuck, doom, tuck. And you see here very clearly that just because a note is long or short does not mean that it's open or closed, okay? That has to do with where we play it on the instrument and how much ring it gets, okay? Later we're going to hear this rhythm on a traditional percussion instrument, and you'll hear exactly what we're talking about, okay? So, we have this combination of long and shorts, dooms and tucks. Let's give it a try, okay? I'm going to, again, put it on my tabletop for my dooms and my hands for the tucks. Here we go. 1, 2. Here we go. Doom, tuck, tuck, doom, tuck, doom, tuck, tuck, doom, tuck, doom, tuck, tuck, doom, tuck, doom, tuck, tuck, doom, tuck. That's it. Very nice.
Now listen to a professional percussionist play these open and closed sounds on the darbuka drum.
Many of the most common instruments heard throughout Middle Eastern music we've talked about before, such as the oud, the darbuka, and the qanun. The oud is a short-necked lute, a stringed instrument with a curved body which dates back to the 7th century. While this instrument originated in Persia over 3,500 years ago, it was very popular among the Egyptian pharaohs. It is heard all over the Middle East, Northern Africa, Asia, and Europe in folk and classical music alike. The qanun is a flat, stringed instrument played on the lap, originated in the Syria and Armenia region. The Middle Eastern qanun is a relative of the ancient Egyptian harps. The darbuka drum, known as a dumbek in the Middle East, originated between Egypt, Turkey, and Armenia, and it's a goblet-shaped drum with a loud, brassy sound. The darbuka is one of the major percussion instruments used throughout the Middle East. Let's take a closer look at instruments that you may not have heard of yet. The ney is one of the oldest flutes that still exists today. Ney comes from the Farsi word for reed and is made from the same wood used to make reeds for modern-day sax, oboe, and clarinet instruments. The ney is most commonly used to name the flute coming from the area around Turkey and Persia, while the Arabic version is called a nai. What makes this instrument really unique is that it requires the player to use both the upper and the lower lips to produce the sound. Let's take a listen to the ney flute. you say the word bagpipe, most people think of Scotland. But most musical scholars and historians believe that the bagpipe originated in Persia and the Middle East. The haban is a type of bagpipe coming from the Persian Gulf. It is thought to have originated from the Persian word for bag. Let's take a listen. The rick is a tambourine from the Middle East. Traditionally, the instrument has 10 cymbals in pairs around the wood body and the thin drum head. Its small size and thin drum head gives it a higher pitch than the other drums and percussion instruments, and it's used to create a higher voice in the percussion section. There are two Iranian string instruments that are very popular in Middle Eastern music, the setar and the tar. They are both wooden instruments with long necks that are relatives of the lute family, but they have a very unique sound. Here are two different listening examples of these two instruments. Take a listen. One of the ancient instruments from Egypt is called the Egyptian lyre. A lyre is a boxed string instrument, also known as a lap harp, usually plucked but sometimes bowed. The Egyptian lyre is said to have been around since 2000 BC, which is so long ago. It's awesome that this instrument is still used and played today. Let's take a listen. episode, we have talked about the harmonic, melodic, and rhythmic elements of Middle Eastern music, as well as looked at a bunch of instruments that you'll see. I want to take a look at music from 3 individual countries: Egypt, Iran, or the Iranian-Persian Gulf, and from Turkey. Let's get started. Much of music from Egypt is tied directly with Arabic classical and folk music. While the roots of Middle Eastern music come from a combination of Egyptian, Persian, and Islamic tradition, the Nubian folk tradition is a musical genre specific to Egypt. Nubian folk music is described as traditional village songs from the south. It is characterized by drumming and clapping, and in recent years, musicians have been incorporating other genres of music such as jazz and pop and funk with this traditional music. Iranian or Persian classical music uses 7 modes or systems called dasgas, which are shur, mahur, homayon, nava, sega, shaharga, and rashpanjga. This classical music uses both composed, which is written down music, as well as improvised music, which requires musicians to create and ornament the music that they are going to play during their live performance. Let's take a listen. The Turkish people are said to have come from Central Asia. However, they truly differentiated themselves as a people after adopting the Islamic religion. Their music combines traditions from Persia, the Byzantine Empire, and Asia, as well as having some musical influences from the Balkans and Eastern Europe. Let's take a listen to some traditional Turkish folk music. Thank you so much for joining me today and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it, and I'll see you next week for our last video.